Hey guys, I just want to jump on real fast. It is April 8th. My friend just texted me and was like, why is everything so bananas today, even though Mercury is stationed direct? So I was like, oh, let me go on and make a little video real fast. So today and for today and up until the full moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, and Saturn are all sextiling Uranus. And Uranus is in Um, Uranus is in Taurus, and Uranus is unpredictability. Uranus is things happening fast. Uranus is getting rid of the status quo in order to make things fresh and new again. Uranus rules Aquarius, so it's bringing in the future, and it brings the future in immediately. So, a sextile is, I don't know if I said this before, but a sextile is 60 degrees. So they're 60 degrees away from each other on the wheel. And so this is a lot of energy moving fast. And usually, I mean, usually sextiles are good. The things that are a little tricky with a sextile is that because the energy is moving, there's nothing to slow it down. There's no bumpers, there's no buffers, and that's usually really good. If you want to get things done uh, you know, or or if but we can get stuck in that trap too, like if the energy's too good, it's not making us think critically. And this is kind of the opposite of that. So, um, Mars, there's a lot. So I wrote down these notes because this is important, you guys. So, there's so much activity happening that's to me that's like resetting this energy that we keep talking about, right? This masculine, feminine, how to be here in the present and how to be there in the now. Um, Do I think there could have been a better way to do this? Of course, but this is where we're at. So, um, Mercury and Venus are both in Pisces. Mars is still in Cancer, and Saturn is in Pisces. So you actually have four planets. So we also have the North Node in Pisces. So you have all this energy in Pisces, which is the last sign of the zodiac, right? And that's all about endings and beginnings. Um, and so they are sextiling Uranus, right? And so they're in a clear communication with Uranus, who's in Taurus, who is fixed Earth, um, who's finally moving again, right? And this is what we get for getting Uranus moving, right? Is to put us on a different path. And the conversations are quick, the conversations are deep, um, and the feelings can be all over the place. Mars, who's in Cancer, right? He's been in Cancer for over 6 months, resetting this idea of this masculine energy. Mars is also squaring Eris and Chiron. Okay, so that is where the breaks start coming in with how do I move forward? Because Chiron is known as the wounded healer. We call him the great healer, but Chiron brings up a lot of insecurities. Chiron brings up a lot of just wounding, like um, maybe so and so was right, or stories that maybe that were put upon us that we should be seeing now that really weren't ours. Um, And Eris is the sister of Mars. She's the one who's more strategic, if you will. Eris stands for justice, right? So she's squaring, um, she's squaring Mars, or Mars is squaring her and Chiron. And so Mars, who understands now that he's getting, I keep saying baptized by fire, right? But the idea too, you guys have to remember Mars used to be Scorpio's ancient ruler. But Mars is bringing back more into this idea of intuition, those feminine qualities of like, just nurturing, seeing the bigger picture, not being so selfish, understanding there's consequences. That's a big one that we need to be learning right now, right? And so Mars is having all these super deep conversations with Chiron because he's in a square. And then Eris is there, and Eris isn't going to budge. Mars is like, Mars wants to move forward, um, but Mars can't move forward without thinking more strategically about moving forward. Mars can't move forward without thinking about justice for everyone. Because Eris is never going to back down off that. Okay, with Eris, she brings forth who should be at the table, who has been missing at the table, why aren't they at the table, right? And so that conversation is happening with Mars while he's in Cancer. Uh, being rebirthed, right? Cancer is that womb, Cancer is the home, Cancer is nurturing. Okay, so Mars is having this conversation and it is uncomfortable because a lot of times we don't like when mirrors are being held up to us. And when I'm speaking of Mars, I'm speaking of our own Mars, right? As well as the collective Mars. So, and at the same time, Mars is trining, which is 120 degrees, Neptune, who is still at 0 degrees of Aries. Mars is the ruler of Aries, and is also trining Saturn, who's still in Pisces. So Neptune at 0 degrees of Aries, right? This is that new starting point in Aries. Aries is the first sign of the zodiac. Neptune is consciousness, right? He's coming into Aries, who Mars rules. Mars has been in this deep rebirth, if you will, being in the womb of Cancer. Um, coming, he's still in Cancer. He's coming out of it, but he's still in Cancer. Um, Neptune bringing in this consciousness to Aries because Aries has to start in this I am and this new beginning. Aries has to understand this as well because its ruler is having this new epiphany, this new rebirth, right? And so it's funny because on one hand, Mars is like in Cancer having this new rebirth, and then Aries does not get a chance. It just gets like the whole tsunami, if you will, comes into Aries and is like, oh, we're really doing this and we're going to do it right now. Okay. So there's really no way around this idea of thinking for this masculine energy to start thinking differently, this masculine energy to start showing up differently. But what we're experiencing now is how it's playing out, and that's really uncomfortable. Um, but it's here because it's important to remember Saturn in Pisces, which is that ending. Saturn's been holding the reins, right, in Pisces. And to me, it was like Saturn, which is, boundaries, father time, if you will, has been showing where the illusion's been really bad in Pisces. And Saturn's still in there showing that. But Saturn is also the idea of the father figure, especially to Mars. Well, right now, Saturn has no rings, right? There's no boundaries with with Saturn. And when I'm saying this, the idea isn't then Mars gets to run rickshaw all over. Is that the right way to say it? Gets to run all over everything. It's the idea that Mars knows it's fucked up and it's going to look for help. And Saturn's like, no, there's no help here. You've got to figure this out, right? Right. There's a time in all our lives where we just kind of have to, as my dad says, eat crow and figure it out. And this is to me is what's happening with Mars in Aries, okay? Because Mars being in Cancer and Aries getting inundated with Neptune, who does rule Pisces, right? But is this idea of the new consciousness coming into Aries? And then with Mars, this new way of being, right? The home, if the self is the home, coming out of this um, watery energy of Cancer. So that is all happening. At the same time, Pluto, who's just hanging out in Aquarius, just kind of off to the side there, he's only at 3 degrees, is trining the South Node. So again, that 120 degrees, Pluto is speaking to the South Node. The South Node is what we're getting rid of. Okay, the South Node is in Virgo, and so what we're leaving behind is being a martyr, martyrism, trying to figure everything out, right? Trying to get it done for everybody. That's what's happening. Always trying to think 6 months in advance in order to try to get things resolved and control, right? Um, which when Virgo has it under, control, it works very well. But Virgos are known to spin, just trying to constantly figure things out. So Pluto sitting in Aquarius is like, uh, we can't keep doing that. So Aquarius is bringing in this new energy Pluto is transforming this idea of being the martyr. Pluto is transforming this idea of like trying to get comfortable with like we can't figure everything out at all times. So it's more important to be focused, right, on the future. I mean, not on the future, but like on the now. And the more focused we are on the now, then that's going to create our future. Um, so it's trying to get us out of this idea of worrying, right? Which, yeah, okay. So, but this is all happening at the same time. Meanwhile, because there's more, the sun is sextiling Jupiter. The sun is in Aries, right? Aries has Neptune in it. Aries has Chiron in there. And I think Eris is in Aries too. I should have double checked because I wasn't looking at the wheel, I was looking at the grid. So the sun is sextiling Jupiter, okay, who is in Gemini, and Jupiter keeps making things bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, right? Um, at the same time, so the sun is focusing on that. Like, what are we making bigger? Okay, but also Jupiter does represent faith, okay? So we're in this struggle, right? What are we having faith in right now? What is it that we're focusing on that's getting bigger and bigger and bigger? And then in Aries, how do we make sure we're not internalizing that, right? How are we making sure this isn't like, oh, this is, my problem, or the opposite. This is your problem. You did this, right? We're trying to get this balance of figuring out the right conversation to have about this. But again, with these sextiles and trines, which is just energy flowing, it is, it's flowing. There's no um, stop for what do you call it? Reconsideration or hold on, let me pump the brakes. And so this is good when you see this stuff. So then I can come on or you guys can look at it and say, okay, this is what's happening. So this is how I can pump the brakes. Venus, is conjunct Saturn. Mercury is conjunct Saturn. And they're both trining Mars as well. So, well, Mars is standing there asking um, Saturn for help. How can I do this? And Saturn's like, hey, buddy, I got no, I got no rings right now. Okay. I mean, he does, but we just can't see him. Venus, who is there? Who represents self-worth, who represents self-love, who represents good communication, and she's right there with Mercury, who is communication, is soothing this conversation, right? That's that soothing point. So we personally should not be going off the rails. If we're starting to have these really bad thoughts or thinking, I mean, right now it's running the fucking gamut of what we're thinking about everything right now. So, but the idea is to take that deep breath, see what storylines really need to like go at this time because everything is being transmuted, transformed, dying, rebirthed, right? And it's happening all at the same time. Um, and really start to focus on that I am presence. How is this new consciousness coming in? What can I do right now? What do I need to do to self-soothe right now? Um, do I have enough um, wherewithal to check in on my friends or my neighbors, see how they're doing? Because also Venus and Mercury are also conjunct Neptune, right? So they're also helping to bring in that new consciousness while also showing us what needs to become conscious in order for us to become happier. Um, I would say more healthy, right? More productive in our own lives. Um, and I mean, there's things that are coming up from the past. I was talking to a friend the other day and we were talking about something that happened in her life that when she was like 15 and she just started dating kind of like this jerk she was talking about when she was like 15. Um, but we kind of sat there and she was like, and I never really processed that, and she's like in her 50s now, right? And so there's some things that we've just kind of lived with our lives that maybe are coming back around. And it doesn't mean to be like a huge deep dive, but maybe just something was like, oh, I kind of realize now how when that happened, that actually did set things in motion, right? And now I can get rid of that, deal with it, forgive myself, whatever it may be. But it is this masculine and feminine energy resetting itself, bringing things in, realizing where things maybe weren't our fault in a sense, or like maybe realizing, you know, because of the situation that we were put in, kind of forced an outcome, right? No matter how we try to work with it or deal with it or explain it, maybe we couldn't at the time. But now, hopefully, that we're adults and have more life experience, we can be like, oh, and so maybe there's places of guilt and shame, Chiron, that we don't have to hold on to any longer. Um, because it was, again, never ours to hold or navigate in the first place, but we did, right? All this is happening. Mars, right, who is squaring Chiron in Eris because she wants to bring in that justice, is also trining the North Node, which is in Pisces. Oh, Pisces. At the same time, sextiling that South Node, right? In that masculine energy in us is how we move forward. That's what moves us, that masculine energy. And so it is um releasing like that martyrism at the same time going towards that Pisces energy, which is what's next, what's new, higher, spiritually higher, vibrating higher. And so this is all happening right at the same time. So moving forward, just with that masculine energy within us, there's a lot going at the same time. And when I talk about the masculine and feminine energy in us, it should be firing at the same time on cylinders. And the masculine energy is really getting pulled apart at the same time, getting transmuted and transformed at the same time because it's training and sextiling the nodes at the same time. But meanwhile, Venus and Mercury, while they're conjunct the North Node, right? The North Node in Pisces, where we're going, they are opposite the South Node, right? And so the feminine side, which is that receptive, intuitionist side, is opposite the South Node, which is kind of putting the brakes on, right? Which is giving us a little bit of respite. If all of this was happening at the same time, we'd be more bananas than maybe we already are right now. And so that is getting us that pause to see, oh, the South Node, no more martyrism. Okay, let's talk about that. What does it mean to me being a martyr? Because Mercury and Venus are opposite, so they can talk about it. Um, and then because they're able to talk about it, they could say, oh, I can see how I moved, right? That masculine side moved through that or did that, or hell, I was put in that situation and I kind of felt like everything was going on. So I showed up that certain way, right? That's where those breaks are. That's where it's able to give some distance so we can kind of see the big picture while that masculine part of us that moves us is getting completely transformed. Okay. Mars and Mercury will stop sextiling Uranus by the full moon, which is on the 12th, but Venus will not. Okay. In Venus, sextiling Uranus, right? Who's in Taurus? Venus rules Taurus. So again, this is a big reset, especially when it comes to money, because Venus is money, Taurus is money. Um, Uranus is in Taurus, blowing all the stuff up about money, right? And what we value. And again, how we value ourselves, how we value our time, how we value the other. And when we talk about valuing the other too, I mean, it's like human rights as well, okay? Not just like, not just like putting a dollar sign on people, which is also something that's coming up really big right now. Um, and so by the full moon, the conversation will be different and we'll be figuring out a little bit better how to move forward. But that conversation between with money isn't gonna it's still gonna be bumpy, you guys. So just know that. And in this time, I would say if you can buy an extra tube of toothpaste at the grocery store, do that. If you can buy an extra, thing of deodorant, do that. Because with the sextiling and trining energy, it's moving fast, so it is bumpy. But because Venus and Mercury are opposite that south node, that's going to help. That's what's stopping us from just falling off the cliff. That's what's stopping us from going into complete martyrism, um, complete spinning burnout. Okay, like how can I figure this out? In getting us a little more stable. Even though Venus is still retrograde, and she's turning direct on the full moon, so she's not, which is the 12th, so she's not going to be that. She's not going to be retrograde much longer. She's still exalted in Pisces, so that feminine energy is still blasting the planet. And Mars is still covered in, water, being in Cancer. And again, Neptune just waterfalled into Aries. Okay. Um, I'm trying to think. And Pluto, who rules Scorpio, is sitting out in Aquarius. Okay. So, yes, emotions are high, but this is also a time of creativity. This is a time to really kind of self-reflection is big on the books right now. Okay. Um, Especially with Mars squaring Chiron and squaring Eris, right? And the fact that Saturn, the father, isn't going to come in and rescue Mars. This is time for Mars to grow up. It's time for Aries to grow up, right? And it's time for us as ourselves to slow down and really look at the decisions that we make on a day-to-day basis, right? And where do they come from? Do they come from shame, guilt, some bullshit story that was placed on us when we were 13? And if that's true, you guys, then it's time for us to be like, whoa, 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 what's my age now? What's important to me now? Um, what do I want my world to look like moving forward, right? All this is happening right here in this week. So, um, lots of bumpiness, right? But the good news again, Mercury is direct, um, Venus is exalted, um, and Mars and Aries are getting some new consciousness, right? So the way we move forward will be different going ahead. And remember, this full moon coming up, which is the pink moon. You guys like my calendar? Um, a woman here in New Orleans illustrated a moon calendar. So I decided to put it up to give you guys a little bit of something else to look at. Um, the full moon is going to be in Libra, which is that cardinal air, which is going to bring in more balance, which we need right now. So I hope this was helpful. If you guys have any questions, just reach out. You guys can put comments below, like and subscribe, all those things. I hope this is going to just bring a little levity to the situation. Things are very uncertain right now. And this is also like a lot of come to Jesus moments and a lot of things. When Uranus is on, Uranus is going to keep shaking that foundation until it shows you all the cracks. Okay, that's Uranus's job because Uranus wants you to fix it immediately, right? And by saying that, knowing like, okay, this is the problem, we can't just keep putting band-aids on it. And it's not like, okay, we've got to have the best solution ever, but it's saying you can't keep ignoring this problem because there's nothing to cover it anymore. There's no band-aids, there's no was it seal? What's the guy that comes and puts the seal on it? What seal? I don't know. I don't know. There's none of that anymore. So Uranus is going to keep shaking that foundation, but it's to get us to see these are the cracks. And we're smart enough to come up with ideas that actually can fix things to be solid because you have to remember Uranus is Taurus. Taurus wants stability. If there's not any stability, Uranus is going to keep shaking it until we get to a place of stability. So and my computer on my pillow is not very stable. Okay, guys, reach out if you have any questions, and I will talk to you soon.